Hello, everybody. Today we are discussing a novel, one of the all-time greats, with return guest Suzanna Tereyan. Suzanna, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Suzanna, I wanted to ask you about this character, this very intriguing character, female. But before I do, I want to give the background of the book that we're talking about, The Painted Veil by Somerset Maugham. And before I even do this, Susanna, I remember walking in a library. This is when I first discovered this book. And this should tell you how long ago this was. Do libraries even exist anymore? Do you guys know?
Actually,
Yeah, they do.
I'm half joking, but um, I was walking in a library and I was just looking up titles, and I saw Mom's name, Somerset Maugham, and I had heard of him before. I had heard of the book of Human Bondage, but I had never read it. I always wanted to. At the time, I hadn't. And then the only book available was The Painted Veil, and I pulled it off the shelf, and I wasn't planning to read anything. I was just you know how you're in that mood of just looking. And I read the first page and the second, and I thought, oh boy, this is a writer and a storyteller. This guy's good. And and then I never looked back. I will give a little background of this story. It's set in China amidst the cholera epidemic of 1919, in which 300,000 people died, mostly on the East Coast. What else do we know about this epidemic? First reported in China from the spread likely from Filipinos passing through Chinese ports. So it started, I think, in the Philippines, and the mortality peaked in August of that year. And the rapid rate of infection was due primarily to water contamination and flies. So it exacerbated in the summer months. And so it carried through the eating of fruit and produce, lettuce, that type of thing. That comes into play in the story because at one point a couple of characters decided to eat salads on purpose. So anyway, before we get to that, Miss Susanna, what would you say? How would you describe Kitty, this woman married to the doctor, well, bacteriologist? They go to China, and how would you describe her?
um, I guess the first thing I would say that she was beautiful. She was pretty. She was high society woman from London, from well-to-do family. I remember that her mom controlled her pretty well, like controlling what she does. And she was so pretty that mom had so many hopes about her marriage. I remember she had a sister who wasn't that good looking, and I think mom had less expectations for the youngest sister. I think it was youngest or oldest. I don't remember that part, but um, she, I think first you would think that she is kind of maybe silly. She's not, she's shallow. Uh, to me, she's not. To me, I think she's pretty intelligent. I think she's bright, and I think she knows what she does. Even though, to me, see, I remember that the novel started with the scene of the affair, that she was having an affair with Charlie. And I remember the novel starts with an affair. So to me, mom has put the scene first to make sure we understand that Kitty knows what she's doing. Kitty is aware of everything, the whole situation. She was aware when she got married with Walter. She knew where she was getting in, what she was gonna get. She knew him very well. She knew what to expect, but she did it anyway. So to me, she's not a character to be considered shallow or not very smart or just emotional, impulsive, none of those things. She's quite rational, not as rational as Walter, her husband, but she knows what she does. And there are a couple of things that maybe later I will mention about what she says that makes me think that she's very much aware of what's going on right now.
Don't you think, though? I'm sorry.
Yeah, ask Jay. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, don't you think, Suzanne, that this book and even this character, I think, not that women could identify with her today, but women could say, "Oh, I get what she's doing. I understand. She, like you said, she's an intelligent woman. She is definitely aware of what she is up to." But I think that people, like, he writes really well for this character, don't you think? I mean, I feel like women would say, "Oh yeah, I know people like this," or people, this is not far off from reality, right? And even 2022 reality. So
yes, absolutely. It's a classic character. It's the way she thinks. It's classic. It's very much like, you know, many women can reflect on it, can see themselves in Kitty. And I think that's why Mom is a classic, and it's just brilliant image character of Kitty that I could relate to every word she said, especially when she was arguing with Walter. Like it's somewhere like in, I think in the, not in the middle, but page 60, 65, somewhere there. I remember that she was saying things that when I remember reading a lot of reviews saying that Kitty was shallow. She, because of the society, because of the influence of, okay, I understand maybe society is 20% of shaping her mind and her behavior, which is like today too. Society shapes our behavior and mind and how we act. But the very nature of her character is not shallow, and she's very much aware of what she's doing. I think somewhere in the conversation, I remember she says, if a man hasn't what necessary to make a woman love him, it's his fault, not hers. So she is intelligent enough to understand such a complex notion, right?
Yeah, I think Mom is setting us up by giving us that name for her, Kitty. The idea that she's a kitten, that she's, you know, sweet, innocent. Maybe she doesn't understand. But I think you're right. It's an especially in light of what she does later in the story towards the end, right? But and there will be no plot spoilers here, folks, this time. We're encouraging everybody to read this book. I feel so bad, Jacob, because I slammed Colleen Hoover last week so badly that I think a couple of people unfriended me. That's how serious people look at Colleen Hoover. So I want people to read this book in just a sort of my mea culpa for bringing up for trashing another writer. I will say for Somerset Maugham, for those of you who don't like fiction, Jake and I were just talking about this off camera, is that isn't this true, Suzanna? Because I know you've read The Moon and Sixpence, and I know you read The Razor's Edge, both Maugham titles. Isn't it true that he doesn't write fairy tales? He writes about real people and places. We can be assured that there was a real Kitty and a real Walter and Charles Townsend. And so this might encourage people to read this because there is such psychological insight into these characters. I want to read what you were referring to. I'm going to read it a little bit later, the conversation between Charles and I think you were referring to Charles and Kitty's conversation.
I was referring to Walter.
Walter.
Yeah, Walter.
That one too. But before I do that, what do you think is Mom's strategy or purpose in this book? Because I say that because we've reviewed Moon and Sixpence in the past, and to me, that's a story about the question, what is art and what is an artist? Because I think that's at the central foundation of what drives that story. What do you think he's doing here in this book? Any thoughts, Jake or Suzanna?
I think, I mean, I think it's the whole the voyage in this particular case of a woman. She's the protagonist, right? And you're seeing her life, and she's changing. And you see that in a couple of his books, or maybe all his books. But you see these characters willing to develop and to become something that they weren't before, correct? And so, shoot, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, let me stop there right now. You know
Can you
why,
hear me?
guys? Yeah, I'm
We
sorry.
both. I know you froze, but did I freeze too?
I think I can't see anybody. One second here. There we go. I'm good now. I think we're all good. So shoot, where was I? I was talking about the development, right? How she yeah. So in this book, we see Kitty really, she's not the same person she's at the end of the book. I don't want to spoil it, but she's not the same person. And I think we enjoy that voyage. And we do that in his other books as well. And you're like, you kind of can't help but root for her, right? Like, okay, come on, get there. And I don't think and I would just say this: Mom doesn't disappoint. You know, and I'll leave it there.
Okay, I agree with that. And you're saying that there is a voyage from her start, which I think
Yeah.
Susanna was a bit more generous and kind to Kitty than I'm gonna be.
Uh-oh.
I do find, I don't necessarily find her that intelligent. However, she knows what she's doing. She but man, is she shallow at times, and or should I say she's superficial. You mentioned, Susanna, that she's pretty, but she knows it, and she only looks at Charles for what he is superficially. Maybe his title, and she keeps mentioning his looks. And
Yeah.
and so her voyage, or her journey to the end, is one of superficiality to great depth and humility. And let's keep it real, she apologizes at one point to her husband. She humbles herself.
Couldn't you say that she has a veil? I mean, I don't want to sound silly here, but that's the whole title. There's a veil, and it's lifted, right? I mean, and I think we see that with, like you're sharing, Ruben, at the end, where she's becoming real and talking to her husband and having that real conversation with him, and not wanting to lie to him anymore, right?
Right.
I agree with both of you. And maybe looking even deeper, the painted veil, like the reality is painted. But the way I see it, also, besides what you say, I agree with you guys. Both of them, all characters know what reality is. Even Kitty knows what reality is, but they are choosing to veil it with illusions, and I think all of them, even Walter, Kitty's husband, in that conversation, he has like a long monologue about that he knew what he was going for. He knew that Kitty wasn't that he wasn't Kitty's type. He knew that Kitty had different hobbies and different interests in life. He knew that she was kind of like silly and like dancing and like all the things that she liked wasn't something that he could offer. Knowing all of this, Walter loved her, and he keeps saying, but I loved you, knowing all those things about the big differences between their personalities. So he was pretty much real about what he was going for. So was Kitty. She was real. She knew she didn't love him. So Charles knew Charles didn't love his wife. So everybody knows what they're going for, but this painted veil, this illusion that things may somehow work out, things may just change. Kitty may change, then may appreciate the manhood and how reserved Walter is. So everybody's hoping for a change, knowing that reality is different. So that hope for a change, it's kind of utopian illusion of, oh, things are going to change once we get married, or once we move to Hong Kong, but nothing changes. Every Kitty stays Kitty, Walter stays Walter,
Yeah.
Charles stays. So, like, to me, Mom did such a tremendous job telling us, people, be real, because nothing is going to change. This is nature of Kitty, nature of Walter, nature of Charles. It's not changing. So I love that.
Well, I want to share where Mom gets the title Painted Veil in a moment, because that was brought up. But let me give you my perspective. And by the way, Suzanna, would you say Kitty changed a little bit?
Yes, she changed, like she grew out of being.
She did grow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I want to share what I think Mom was doing in this book, and that is what his purpose was, or at least one of them. Do you remember in Moon and Sixpence when the narrator stumbles upon the Gauguin painting for the first time? He couldn't make heads or tails of it. He wasn't sure if he liked it. And I think if we could go back in time and stumble upon a painting for the first time of a genius, it wouldn't be as glorious as what we think it would be, because it's genius. It would be like, what is this starry night this Van Gogh just gave us? Or I just saw, what was that? It wasn't that pretty, but you can't stop thinking about it. There was that feeling you got in Moon and Sixpence where you saw this painting through the eyes of the narrator. And he couldn't figure it out, but it was glorious as he kept thinking about it, and as he went back years later and thought about that painting. Similarly, I think this is a picture. Instead of art, what is art, or what is an artist? It's what is goodness. Like, what does it mean to be a good man or a good woman? And I think in Walter's case, her husband, he's a good man, but I don't think a lot of people would recognize a good man if they saw it, if they stumbled upon it, like a good painting or genius painting. Because if you see, there are certain moments, Kitty was afraid of Walter. And even the other, I'm forgetting the character, this very great character, minor character, says, you fear him. There's this, even in the movie, remember, Jacob? She was afraid of him.
Yeah.
And there's something to that character, and where you're
it's unsure, like she's unsure. Yeah.
And so I know Jordan Peterson has talked about this idea of kind of holding back the monster, taming the beast within you. And that's one of the signs of goodness. So that's there. And there's a great humility in this guy, where at one point she asked him, do you hate me? I mean, this is a woman who's been cheated. He was humiliated by his wife and this Townsend guy. And do you despise me? And she asked, do you despise me, to Walter? And Walter says, no, I despise myself. And I think it's just the marks of a good man. And to me, it's a good companion piece to Moon and Sixpence in that way, is because we often use the word good. He's a good man or a good woman, but what does it mean? And I think it does also apply to Kitty, because she becomes a good woman. Anyway, any
that's
other
great.
thoughts?
But
No, go ahead.
Before, I just wanted to mention, I agree that she changes and she becomes a good woman. She evolves into a different woman. But look at the sacrifices on the way. And to me, it's like, if there are no sacrifices, like her husband dies, and I think it's symbolic in the novel, from cholera. But I think I think Mom did it on purpose to show what you sacrifice at what cost. You're going to change at what cost. You're going to become a mature person and understand the value of life. And that's what happened to Kitty. And it's sad. I mean, it's sad that you go through so much grief and pain.
But isn't that so true with us and with life? I mean, it's just sometimes we as people, we have to get hit in the face like that, like a death or a tragedy, and go, oh, I need to change. I need to stop doing this to myself or doing to other people. And that's probably why he's so revered, because of that. And like what you're sharing, Suzanne, is like it took a tragedy to change.
Right.
Well, I do want to mention, there goes my hope of us not plot spoiling, but it's okay, Susanna. We forgive you.
She's a guest. Leave her alone, please.
Yes. Well, I do want to say this. I used to write a little blog about literature, and I used to have these posts on the greatest insults in literature. So there was Balzac had a great page of a character insulting another one. And great insults are almost better than great love stories or great love poems. Oh, before I forget, should I share? Speaking of poem, can I share where the Painted Veil comes from?
Oh yeah.
So the Painted Veil, like you were indicating, Susanna, is the illusions of life. That's really what it comes from. And Percy Shelley, who we've covered on this channel, we devoted a week to Percy Shelley, did we not? Was it a week that we devoted to him?
I think at least one piece. I don't think it was a whole week, but I think it was
Not a whole
just
week. Okay.
Yeah.
He wrote a poem titled "Lift Not." You know what? This is too poetic. Let me end it with that one. But can I share with you a great insult from this book? Because there are many.
Please.
When Walter confronts his wife, this is what he tells her. I had no illusions about you. I knew you were silly and frivolous. By the way, Susanna, here you were being very generous, because Walter's not so generous about Kitty right here. I knew you were silly and frivolous and empty-headed, but I loved you. I knew that your aims and ideals were vulgar and commonplace, but I loved you. I knew that you were second rate. It's comic when I think how hard I tried to be amused by the things that amused you, and how anxious I was to hide from you that I wasn't ignorant and vulgar and scandal-mongering and stupid. I knew how frightened you were of intelligence, and I did everything I could to make you think me as big a fool as the rest of the men you knew. Isn't that just a delicious insult?
I think it's coming from a place of a lot of pain, and sometimes we say things that are truthful, but also there's a tinge of not being true. He was hurting. I mean, he's human. He knew exactly what was going on. He's not a dummy, and he felt it. He's a husband. Husbands know, wives know when their spouse is up to something, right? Maybe not the moment, but they do figure
Not
it out.
always. Not always.
Something in there, I think, as a married person. I think that I would if I was in that situation, but maybe not. You're right. But that being said, he's coming from a place of hurt, and I think that's why those words are powerful and stinging. But sometimes when you're in that situation, sometimes you give it another thrust just to let that other person know that you're hurt. And not that I don't really 100% believe that he would have married her if he really believed everything you just shared right now. I just don't think so. But that's just maybe just an opinion.
Okay. I will. There were a couple other great insults in there, and I just love it. I don't know why, because I guess when I teach poetry or literature, I try to tell students that curse words are cliche at this point. Can you insult somebody without using a curse word? It's really an art. It's a skill. There's no curse words there.
No.
Actually, I'm going to give you another one just because Kitty gives sends an insult to Charles. This is what she tells him. When she confronts him and she realizes my husband was right. He's not going to leave his wife for me. And I know all that he knew. She goes, I know that you're callous and heartless. I know that you're selfish, selfish beyond words, and I know you haven't the nerve of a rabbit. I know you're a liar and a humbug, and I know that you're utterly contemptible. Imagine someone telling that to you, such words. And here's the crazy part, Susanna. She goes back to him.
Yeah, well, because she's a woman, that's how it
Oh
works.
boy, we got to edit that out.
It's a little complicated. Well, I think what Suzanne's trying to say is it's not as, I mean, I think that's what makes women and men different. It's complicated. It's not easy. I mean, she's still working it out, right? Is Suzanne, don't you think that she's still working it out? She does work it out. Maybe
Yes.
not the way we would do it. The guys would do it this way. They work it out in a different way. And I think that's what makes it, I think that's what makes her so interesting, is that she is complicated. She's not, she's not Walter. She's not Charles. She's who she is. And that's why it's so fun to read her. Right. But anyway,
Yeah, she's trying, you're right, she's complicated. And I meant that she's not thinking like men do. I mean, women really think differently. There are so many layers to it. In a case of Walter, he knew what he was going for, but because he loved her, he married her. She knew she was going for a man she doesn't love. Why would she do that? I mean, Walter has justifications such as love, right? I don't care if you're silly. I don't care if you're, not my type. I just love you. But with Kitty, why is she going for it? Like, she doesn't love him. She had so many other young men who proposed before in a novel, but she said no. And then she goes for him. And I don't really understand why in this situation, just to get married, I guess. And so a lot of things that I think many women, including me, are thinking is not reasonable. It's just emotions. It's just feelings, it's just different.
Yeah. I think that when you mentioned that why she married him, I think like you and I would say, oh no, but I think at that moment she thought, you know what? Why not? There's some good things here. There's some good things he's offering here. And I remember she was thinking back on her age. I'm 25. My younger sister's getting married. Geez, why? I better get going here. And so she is thinking about herself, and it kind of goes with her character. And then she thinks he's not such a bad guy, right? He's going to provide and so forth. And they're going to have an adventure in China. And like you said before, Susanna, she just carries her problems over there, and she's not she's still the same Kitty until we see that she starts changing. But like that's what makes this I mean, I think if she's not this character, we don't read page 10. I mean, the first couple pages are a little, nice, right? But after that, we would put it down if she wasn't interesting. So,
and I don't know if we made it clear, but really, this is a story about a husband and wife who voluntarily go into the eye of the hurricane in cholera infected China to help people there. And at one point, Kitty asked the question, "Did you bring me here to kill me?" And she keeps asking him that. And the brilliance of Walter, and maybe this is going to sound heartless to a lot of people listening to this, the brilliance of Walter, he doesn't answer. But I don't think I don't know. I'll just let people read it.
No, I think it's part of his character, who he is. I mean,
part of who he is.
Yeah, who he is. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Ruben, just real quick. As a history teacher, when I read these books that we review, Ruben, I think, well, how can I put in my classroom? I do want to say quickly, because you mentioned about the cholera epidemic, this particular one, and then they just came out at the heels of the Spanish flu, right? And then of course we've had these epidemics we've had recently, and so in my class, in the past I've done like lessons on different diseases, and usually coming after wars, and how medicine's changed because of that. And I think even in our society today with COVID, I think we're gonna see. I think society's not gonna be the same 5 years from now. We're gonna do things, say things, we're gonna behave differently. We're gonna be expected to do certain things differently. And I think that's what even happened here with this call. I mean, it changed that whole society. I mean, people, the way they clean, the way they disinfected things and so forth. It changed how they did things. And so that's what I would bring into my classroom about this time period, because it's a real changing of you feel like we were going for sure going ending the 19th century to the 20th century, and that this author, that's who he is. He's like taking us from the past, and now he's getting us into the 20th century and saying these are the issues of this time period. So that, as a history teacher, that's how I looked at it, and I said, what can I do, and how can I bring it to my kids? And those conversations that we'd have, and how what we look into. So just want to throw that in there. Sorry.
And I know Suzanna is about to get her master's in history, so she'll be teaching some of these ideas.
Yeah, so I was thinking that I would probably also mention the social context of the novel, like how society was like in 1920s, we're talking after World War I. So like in the United States, you have Jazz Age, and in England, it's like a boom of capitalism, and the Industrial Revolution is done, but it's almost like, you know, getting into imperialism. And I would also talk probably about how society, like let's say in China, the characters that Mom is talking about, that I think the Mother Superior, a nun who was, you know, how she was dealing with notions of love and hate and help and humanity, and how little more superficial and shallow was like London, like the city, like, governors, how they, you know, the social aspect of history. I would
For sure.
also
That'd be great.
emphasize compare, let's say, Hong Kong with London after World War I, how different people acted, how cholera, how it brought up a lot of like humane kind of qualities in people, even in Kitty, who wasn't even close to being a nun or, you know, or helping others, sick people, but she changed. And that's also a social aspect of history, like you mentioned. So
it's great.
Very nice. I would probably like to close it with the poem Percy Shelley, Lift Not the Painted Veil. So it starts with the line, lift not the painted veil. Don't do it. Which those who live call life, though unreal shapes be pictured there, and it but mimic all we would believe. With colors idly spread, behind lurk fear and hope, twin destinies. Whoever weave their shadows over the chasm, sightless and drear. I know one who lifted it. So does this sound like Walter? I know one who had lifted it. He sought, for his lost heart was tender, things to love, but found them not. Alas, nor was there aught the world contains, the which he could approve. Through the unheeding many he did move, a splendor among shadows, a bright blot upon this gloomy scene, a spirit that strove for truth, and like the preacher, found it not. So nice. Percy Shelley is telling us, don't lift the painted veil. You're going to see things you're not going to be happy with. So pretty interesting stuff. Any last words?
No, if I could just share that, if you guys have not read a Mom book, stop after this video, pick any of his books. I can't think of one book I say, don't read that one. That one's boring. And I've read like 3 or 4 of them now. And I think he wrote like 5 or 6, right, Ruben? And so
he wrote more than that. And he also wrote
plays
and many
the plays, yes.
Oh yeah, he wrote more than 4.
Okay. Yeah, no, I said he wrote about 5 or 6, but he wrote a lot of plays. You're right.
More than 5 or 6.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. See, I didn't know. I'm learning about Mom. We definitely will probably have an episode on Mom, just because he's such an intriguing guy and such an interesting person. But yeah, I mean, like I said, Ruben, I just want to encourage people to pick up a book and just get going, because you'll get lost in it. You'll read it really quickly, even though some of his books, like Human Bondage, is just a big one, but it's a lot of fun.
And you will learn about history.
Yeah,
and you'll learn about real people. It's like I said, he doesn't write fairy tales. But thank you, Miss Suzanna Tereyan, for joining us.
Thank you. And by the way, I just wanted to add that Mom is very popular in Europe, in Russia, in Armenia. I was exposed in my teenage years. He has a great book called Theater,
Oh my.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right. Theater is a good one, and I remember you and I talking about that and how much you especially like that one, Susanna.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, everybody, for stopping in once again, and we will see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.